Our broadcast name is Bozo, based in our condo. Get ready, cause our show is starting really pronto. Talking tons of buzz stuff we all like. Give us a listen, let me tell ya, we don't bite. We know your mind will be jumping super high as you hear us making light of our lives. Time spots, frequencies, and energies. Time spots, frequencies, and energies. Get us thinking about space, poo-poo, and pee-pee. Come on, come on. 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 Look at the sky and listen.
Wow, welcome back. We're on season 2, episode 4 of PodcastBozo. Today is 10/4, happy October 2020. Fun fact, Ireland does not have snakes, and we picked that one because Eli hates snakes, so he's thinking about moving to Ireland pretty soon here.
Hate him. Go Ireland.
Shout out to Henry M. for being a loyal listener this week. I'm your host, JJ, and I'm here with Sean, a certified beer server, and Eli, our resident artist. Today we'll be talking about success and paths to success. And by the way, we have activity off the sound waves. You can find us using @Bozo Podcast on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter. I messed that one out last week. It's @Bozo Podcast on Twitter. Not to mention, you can observe our beautiful faces on YouTube now. And you might notice there's a third screen here. We have a guest this week. He goes by the name of Casey Ryan. How you doing today, Casey?
I'm doing well, thanks.
So, good to hear. Good to have you on here. We like your background. What's going on there? What are these?
These, I'm an incurable collector.
Yeah.
And after DVD started to die off, I started collecting these Funko things. So I've got about close to 400 of them in my little corner of the world here.
Did you call it a man cave?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that where you are right now?
It's where it's my home office / screening studio / podcasting area. So it's my little corner of the house.
Yeah.
So.
We know a lot about multi-purpose recording rooms. I don't know if you've noticed, but that's my bed back there.
That's where the magic happens.
It's not a studio that is made to look like my room. It's just my room.
I thought we were going to tell people that it was a studio made to look like your room.
I think we should. I think we should continue that.
Actually, your room.
Yeah, I do the good corporate thing, and when I'm because the whole pandemic, I've been working from home since March, but
right,
and I'll do the good corporate citizen thing and post a virtual backdrop.
Yeah, when you first
for you guys, I've got the Funko thing.
You have a virtual background. What's your go-to virtual background?
Usually something from some kind of nature scene or something like that. Something very abstract. But, for you guys, I'll put the fun stuff up.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks for putting on your fun face. We appreciate that. So you mentioned corporate. What is, can you say what corporate is? I don't know. I don't want to breach any barriers here.
Okay, I work as I won't say which company I work for, but I work as a project manager for a big IT company.
Nice.
And prior to that, I've been doing that for about 10 years. And then prior to that, I spent 10 years as a sales rep for a much smaller company than that.
Nice.
So in one form or another, I've spent the better part of my professional career in sales in some respect.
And what is your podcasting career? Obviously, you have one of those as well.
The podcast was something that I started because it goes back about 12 years. It's called The Cutting Room Floor. And what happened was I was working with a guy who I'm still friends with by the name of Ian Richards, and he was running a very popular, he was co-piloting, I should say, a very popular French language podcast that had to do with the video game business. And I saw how much fun he was having on his lunch breaks, putting together his shows and planning what his guests were going to say. And I said, that looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And I kind of picked his brain about it, and I found somebody who was willing to give me a shot. I said, you know what, you could easily take this format and adapt it to, indie entertainment or, filmmakers or things like that. And, the guy turned around and said to me, that's a good idea. Why don't you go do it?
Yeah.
And, he helped get me started initially. It was rough going at first because I didn't really know what I was doing. But after a few months, I found my groove, and about 12 years later, I'm still here.
Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And you're still enjoying it.
Oh yeah, it's lots of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We I mean, you have a ton of content on your website. It's awesome. Like you could scroll through and pick, and there's names you recognize and industries all over the world, and you can easily like learn a lot about something you didn't know much about to start with just from listening to one of your episodes in 30 minutes. And I mean, that's kind of the beauty of podcasting, right? Like, is that you can, I mean, it's just fun. We do it for us. We love talking to people like you, and we have such a blast with it. So
there's a lot of shows out there that are longer than mine, and personally, I mean, this is my sales training. I like to keep mine to the length of an average car ride.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather have somebody back on 3 or 4 times to tell a different set of stories, and just a nice, easily consumable chunk.
Well, then you'll hate
it. Also makes it easier to plan. So if I want to have more than one guest, and I have done marathon sessions where I've done 2 or 3 hours in a row, and just because based on people's availability, where I had more than one person on the show. So it's you can get a lot crammed into a half an hour if you plan it properly.
Well, you'll hate our podcast because it's a marathon. It can go longer.
I'm here. This is your ballpark. I'm here. I'm just happy to be here.
Wait, no, it's our ballpark now, Casey.
Yeah,
you're in the club now. You're part of the fan.
We're all playing ball. Like,
sportsmanship.
Yeah. So we go. Usually hour and a half, 2 hours. If we often have guests that can only stay for an hour. We have people that stay with us for 2 hours. So ride along as much as you want or can. And if you start to hate us, you can just press off. You don't even have to say bye. So
it's the bus stop of podcasts.
Yeah. The bus stop of podcasts. Yeah.
You just grab a pull cord and tell them to stop.
I'm ready.
It's no rules. I like it.
Oh man,
keep you on your toes.
So I thought we'd I don't know, sometimes we have a little small talk at the beginning. Casey, you have anything interesting happen to you this week at the beginning, during?
Well, I just did a show this afternoon. I had Jonathan Goldman on, who is an accomplished television producer working on a lot of different reality shows. Also put one of his bands back together that he had when he was a teenager, and these guys got together about 30 years later. He was talking about some of the cool new work that he was doing. I've taken a break from the show a little bit for the course of the summer just because I was so busy, but I'm ramping up again, and I've got content booked pretty much through the end of October and into November now. So
nice.
Some fun stuff coming down the pipe for sure.
Do you get overwhelmed? You have a job and you have all the booking for these people coming into your podcast. Does that scare you ever?
No, not really, because it's all a question of balance, right? So, these are things that I do in my spare time because I enjoy them, right? Some people, do team sports, and some people, do other things. For me, the most fun that I have in my downtime is getting to talk to people that are out there actually making the movies that I have so much, get so much enjoyment out of,
mm-hmm.
right? And to some extent, due to my sales background, I'm able to help them market their films a little bit, so they feel that they get a little bit of value out of it, and works for everybody.
Have you ever wanted to shift full time into podcasting, or do you like it as kind of your side gig?
If the situation arose where I could make a legitimate living at it and have the kind of controls on it that I would need in order to be comfortable with it,
right?
Certainly, I'd be open to the idea. But I mean, I also enjoy what I'm doing full time too. So it's a question of, again, I've got a good mix right now, and if the situation were to change, I'm not going to say never, but for now, I'm happy with what I've got.
Well, it seems like you have a good following, you know? I see like your podcast episodes have your ones, I've seen up to 300 downloads, let alone listens and things like that on your platform there. And you got a good Twitter following. I feel like why aren't you at the point of monetization, I guess? I don't mean to put you on the cooker. I'm asking for my own selfish. We're trying to grow, you know?
I mean, that's a fair question.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, some of it is a question of time. I'm not ready to make the move to that full time because I do have a good job that is fulfilling and I've been with the same company for 10 years. There have been opportunities that have been presented to me that have been more or less legitimate. A couple of them, not so much. I will admit, you got to be careful too. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, I have had partnerships with people that have allowed me to some extent hit above my weight class a little bit, and I've had celebrities on, and it's exciting when that happens. But right now I'm really doing it because I enjoy it. I mean, you know, this is what I do. You know, a lot of people don't really understand this, but this is really what I do to relax.
Yeah.
So, you know, I know that no matter how hard a week I've had, or you know what kind of craziness there is out in the world in terms of headlines on the news or anything like that, I know that I've got a window at 2:00 on Sundays where I know I'm going to have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you know, I'm just going to sit back, and I usually try to position my show as kind of a conversation between friends in the parking lot after you go to a movie.
Yeah.
Right?
We read that in one of your articles.
Yeah, half the fun of going to a movie is actually watching the thing, and then half the fun is debating with your buddies out in the parking lot.
Yeah,
exactly.
Right.
I have vivid memories of that, of just specifically for some reason Suicide Squad. I remember I went and watched it. I was so stoked for it, and a friend and I got back, and we just sat in the car outside the movie theater. Like I kept like starting it up, and then we'd get into a conversation about one facet of the movie, and then I'd turn the car off, and we'd talk about that, and we ended up being there for like an hour and a half, and to be clear, we were shitting on the movie, but we didn't like it.
I mean, I went to Avatar and I did the same thing. I mean, you know, my friends and I were I have you know, two good friends that I've known since I was in high school, and you know, I use them as my sounding board. And we went out in the parking lot, and what in the hell did we just see? And you know, somebody said it reminded them of Braveheart because a guy had a blue face and was raising an army. And I said, well, you need gorillas in the mist because you know, you've got the whole, you know, nature thing going, and you know, preserving an endangered species and all this. And we just went off on each other for a good solid 45 minutes on Avatar, I remember.
Well, it's one of the most effective ways to sort out your ideas. You know, you're saying them out loud, you're hearing how they're received, you're kind of literally bouncing them off each other. It makes a lot of sense as to why it's such a popular thing, and it's so communicable for you to have your platform based on that.
A lot of it is trial and error. I mean, I think, you know, there was a lot of experimentation that went on, especially in the beginning. Right? When I first got started, I had it in my head that I was going to be like, you know, kind of a standalone version of Siskel and Ebert at the movies, where I just go out and see something and then tell everybody what I thought. Mm-hmm. That got really boring really quickly, and then you know, there was no way for me to fill any more than 5 or 10 minutes at most, and that's if I had a lot to say about something. So the guy that I was working with at the time said, you know what, you really need somebody to speak with. He said, go out and find a filmmaker to talk to, and we'll try that. Yeah. And even at that, I mean, you know, the first few that I did, I would research the living hell out of people. I would, you know, try to watch everything that I could. And what happened was I was doing shows that were extremely well prepared, but there was no element of surprise to it at all. There was no element of discovery at all. And I remember I was sitting, you know, on my couch right here, and I had a eureka moment where I was watching TV, and there was an interview with Larry King, and he said, "Let your guest be the expert." And all of a sudden I said, okay, now I get it. You know, I mean, you have to know why people are there to talk to you, but that really is all that you need to know. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, and there is such a thing as being too prepared. Yeah. So I took a step back and I said, okay, you know, if somebody sends me the movie, I'm going to watch them. If somebody sends me a book, I'll read it, you know, or an album, I'll listen to it. But there is such a thing as doing too much homework. Yeah.
Yeah, we run into that too. We'll do a topic, we do too much, ends up sounding too much like a script, and you roll it back. And I think for me personally, I think maybe our ideas on this differ a little bit, but me personally, my favorite episodes are when we have a guest or an expert, as you say, that comes on and we chat with them, because like it's just a conversation with someone we never met before who's very good at what they do. Like last week we had one of the nation's leading NASA journalists on, and now you're here and you're supposed to prove that you're smarter than the nation's leading NASA journalist.
It's a tough seat to be in.
Yeah.
I did, in the interest of full disclosure, I did watch most of that episode, and that guy was really bright. How am I going to follow that?
Well, thank you for listening. That's incredible that you listen. But
we could just talk about flat Earth and shit on all of his ideas.
Yeah, you can just
we just piggyback that conversation.
See what I know about trying to look for alien life and conspiracy theories and all that
and we promise we won't shit on you in the next episode. So yeah,
you get the golden pass.
Yeah.
Hey, okay, all right, I get the buzzer.
Yeah. Well, so as you said, you're the expert. You're the guest in this situation, and I saw by your tweet you haven't been a guest in a while. You have any information to bestow upon us? Give us a goal. Give us a goal rule.
I was looking forward to this because there's one of the things that actually I learned in the process of doing this show. I said, what's going to be a lot of fun? There were two things that I was really looking forward to trying. One of which was actually being a guest on somebody else's show, which I found out was a lot harder being on this side of the desk than it is on yours.
Is it? We'll find out soon.
Well, yeah. The other that I was really looking forward to that I found out were some of the hardest interviews that I ever did were interviewing stand-up comedians. I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy. Montreal, where I live, is home to arguably the biggest, most important stand-up comedy festival in the world. So I was a permanent fixture going to some of those galas, and I said, it's going to be really fun if I get a stand-up comedian on. And the first couple that I did, one of them was somebody that I went to high school with, and I just lost complete control of the conversation within the first 5 minutes.
So it's just a
one-on-one. You just sort of pull a cord and let them go, and they're going to say what they're going to say, and it's hard to get in the questions that you want to get in,
right?
Because they're kind of off in their own spiral in terms of where the dialogue goes. So you just sort of try to take your cues as much from them as you can, and see if you can cross off as many of the topics as you want to get to.
Yeah, I think we kind of ran into something similar, in my opinion, in the first couple episodes we did with guests. Is that our normal format is having, when we don't have a guest, is just having two topics. Like I and Eli will like research a topic, we come back, we like the other people to receive it fresh, so it's kind of like an interview in a way, because that person's receiving it fresh, we're kind of talking about it, but when we have a guest on, we tried to apply that same method when they came on. The first couple times we didn't touch 10% of the topics that we wanted to. Like they would go off and off and off about their thing, which is fine, which we realize is exactly why we want to have people on, and we were trying to push our agenda a little too much, so we kind of face that same issue there, where we just
best to just let it ride, not try and wrangle it in.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, there is an element of that, but there is also an element that you want to get to certain levels of content that are going to be interesting for the people that are going to be there, right? So, I mean, yes, I agree with the free form aspect of it too, but there has to be some discussion topics that make people want to tune in. Sure,
yeah, there has to be a topic, like, so someone can look at it and be like, this is why I want to hear this. Like, if it's like, oh, we're just talking today, and they're why in the hell would I listen to that? Like, we're not famous, no one knows who we are, so like, why would anyone tune into that? That makes sense. But yeah, so that being said, our topic today is I wanted to talk about like success and what success means and how to achieve success and the definition of it. This is relevant to me in this case because I know you talk to a lot of indie musicians and people kind of on the up and up, people trying to make it bigger, on the swinging up into the I don't know, trying to find their way in their career path. You've also talked to some people who are already famous, but and a lot of those as well. But I know in the indie crowd, in terms of that, there's a lot like the path to becoming a popular musician or a popular filmmaker or a game developer or anything like that seems fairly similar when you're talking high level concepts. And a lot of people look at those. A lot of people look at like they look at someone who's big, like I don't know, Penelope Cruz for some reason just came to my mind. But Johnny Depp, I've been watching a lot of Pirates of the Caribbean. Those people are famous because everyone pays attention to them. They're the lead of the show. You know, you look at a Celine Dion or something like that.
Celine Dion.
I've been talking in a Western. I've been talking in a Western.
I can tell you were reaching for a Montreal example.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Right. But you know, you talk about these people, and a lot of people are like, "That's what success is," you know, or like Mr. Wall Street, that's Mr. Success. And it's like, the more I thought about it in this case, it's just like the more I understood, and the more I researched about it and the psychology of it, is like success. First of all, isn't an achievement. Success is a result of reaching your goal, basically.
That's what the definition of on the internet was, what you looked at?
It wouldn't be verbatim, I wouldn't say. If you ask Siri, I wouldn't say that that's what it would say. But yeah, something along that line. It's like, and I was reading a lot of like misconceptions about, they're obviously like motivational pieces to like make you realize that you can be successful too. You don't need to be Mr. Wall Street. But like, there's a lot of people who take different paths to success, and what success means is different. Like, you may look at Johnny Tsunami and say that person's successful because they have money and they have cool hair. And
Johnny Tsunami.
I just watched that movie. I just watched that movie literally 3 days ago.
No way.
Johnny Tsunami?
Absolutely.
What's this? You guys who've...
What's the occasion?
I had just gotten my Disney Plus account activated, and I was browsing through all the old Disney movies from my childhood.
It's an
that
old
I
Disney
absolutely
movie?
wanted to rewatch. And Johnny Tsunami popped up, and I thought one of the funniest things about that movie is, you know, his dad wants to remove him from a situation with his grandfather, he thinks his grandfather's negatively influencing his son. So he takes a job in New England to works for developing some sort of, I don't know, system for schools in the area, but they claim that they're in Vermont. And I'm like, I'm in Vermont. But the shots that they clearly show of mountains throughout that entire movie has to be the Rockies or, you know, mountains of California. And it's just nowhere near what Vermont is. Like, nobody cared at all that they claimed to be in Vermont, and they were nowhere near Vermont.
Well, that's like movies. There's a lot of movies shot in Toronto, and like a lot of the Marvel movies and stuff like that. It's all about where you can shoot, where the budget allows, and where the location is
what
easier.
you can get away with for the most part.
And like, so they're probably like.
I mean, one of the examples that still gets me, that makes me laugh, is I mean, I'm dating myself a little bit, but one of the later films in the Highlander trilogy, the Highlander films, I forget which one, but there was a scene where, you know, they all had to get to the airport for some reason, and they must have said the word LaGuardia about 5 times. We got to go to LaGuardia this and LaGuardia that. Yeah. Okay, you know, and they all hop in the cars and they tear to this airport, and there's a shot of the bad guy standing above a sign that says, you know, "Welcome to Montreal." No. and I thought, okay. Yeah, and they're not even hiding it. It was in French, and there was a Canadian flag there and the whole bit. And they go, okay, that's LaGuardia.
That's the Montreal section of LaGuardia Airport.
I feel like
little kiosk area.
Yeah. I feel like that situation, though, almost could be like an overlooked mistake, or like, you know, a lot of times I think they talk about in the movie Troy, where you can see, or is it 300, you can see airplanes flying over in the shot for some of their long distance shots.
Crazy.
Like, those are mistakes that can almost like sneak by, and somebody just misses due to, you know, not doing their job correctly. But like, if you've ever been to Vermont, if anyone viewing that movie has ever been to Vermont, you know, like, that it can't even be. It's not without a doubt of a question.
Not even close.
Like, it's glaring. It's a joke. Who
the size of a
were they
mountain.
trying to convince people? I lost it. I couldn't stop yelling at the TV when I saw that, you know?
You were
can
yelling
easily
at the
picture
TV
that.
while watching a Disney movie.
Well, that's not
Well, with the Montreal one too, I feel like if they say it so many times and you go, and all of a sudden they're at the airport and you see Montreal above that, I think I'd start questioning my understanding of the movie. I'd be like, I thought they were just going to LaGuardia. Yeah.
I mean, Montreal's kind of a neat place because it often gets substituted for places in Europe because there's a lot, especially the older part of the city looks a little bit like some of the places that you'd see in France or and I've traveled a lot. I mean, that's something else that I really enjoy. In addition to podcasting, traveling is something that has been a lifelong passion of mine. I've been all over most of Europe and certainly the Caribbean and places like that. There's still a lot of places that I want to see, but traveling is something that I really enjoy.
Say COVID ends tomorrow and you have no responsibilities. Where is the first place you're flying to?
I still haven't been to the British Isles or Ireland yet. Mm-hmm. And that's long been on my bucket list. I've got a lot of friends over there.
They don't have snakes over there.
No snakes either.
No, I mean, I'd love to get to England. I haven't been there yet. That's long been an interest of mine. There's still parts of Scandinavia, although I've seen most of it. I haven't been to Norway yet, but I've been to Sweden and Finland a couple of times. But
what specifically attracts you to those areas? Is it, the history of the area? Is it the natural beauty? Is it the people that you like to engage with? What specifically determines maybe where you decide you want to travel?
Well, part of it was a family decision. So there were certain areas that we all wanted to see. One time we took a cruise around the Mediterranean, and we all got the chance to get into Rome and other parts of Italy like Sicily, and one of the things that I really enjoyed on that trip was Barcelona in Spain. I've often said that. If anybody offered me a job there where I could move to Barcelona, my house would be on the market in the morning. I mean, I envy anybody that gets a chance to see that city for the first time. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah.
The other one was one of my things on my bucket list was actually to get up into Russia, and we took a cruise that went into St. Petersburg, and we spent a couple of days there. Got a chance to see some of the sights, and very, very different way of life, but I'm glad that I saw it. And the funny thing was when we went to Sweden, that was the first time I'd been since I was about 14. The first time I went was with the music department in my high school, and I'd forgotten most of it. But it was odd for my wife and I to be walking around the streets of Stockholm, and all of a sudden I have a deja vu moment where I'd stop dead in my tracks, and I'd say, you know what, my best friend and I were here when we were kids, and we were walking right up and down the street.
Wow, that's wild.
Did you play an instrument?
Not anymore, but when I was in high school, I played trumpet.
Oh, you're a trumpet player.
JJ's a successful saxophone player, an alto sax, I believe, right?
Well successful. Yeah, we have a 10-minute section in every episode where I just play saxophone and everyone listens peacefully.
It keeps getting edited out for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, I don't know why we haven't heard that yet.
Technical difficulties. Casey, I got a question for you.
Sure.
So you mentioned how you got into this because you just had fun. It was like shooting the shit with your buddies outside after a movie, just like giving the rundown of what your take was and all that. And all the different musicians, films, anything you've seen, is there like a pattern or a certain thing that you look for that you really love, or like that you look for in like a really good movie? Not in like a objective way, but in like a personal way that you identify with and you like to see?
In terms of a guest, or in terms of a movie that I'm watching?
In terms of movie you're watching, or just any creative project.
Anything, yeah.
Okay, so I have a little silent prayer that I kind of say to myself when I sit down to go to a movie, and I say, you know, dear Lord, give me a reason to give a damn about these people.
Yeah.
But to me, it all starts with character construction, right?
Yeah.
So if and a lot of it has to do with writing. I've said many times that there's a lot of things that you can compensate for in a movie, but bad writing isn't one of them. I mean, you can check your brain into neutral and go to an action adventure film, and you know you're not going to get Hamlet when you go to the Fast and the Furious, but if the characters aren't engaging, right, I generally lose patience fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So
makes sense.
To me, if I have a time of death rule that if I can't get through the first 30 minutes, but I give it a good solid 30 minutes, I have shut things off. I'll admit to that. I won't tell you which ones I've shut off.
I was just going to ask.
Shut things off.
You won't say?
Okay. You guys remember Adam Sandler's cartoon 8 Crazy Nights?
Yeah.
No, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, the Hanukkah movie.
The Hanukkah movie? I didn't last 10 minutes. I said, okay. I waited until I saw him drop trow and fart in front of a bunch of nuns, and I said, I'm wasting my time here.
Dude, that was the highlight. That was where you just get good.
You're talking to the biggest Adam Sandler fan over here, so.
Well, no, I mean, I watch a lot of. I mean, I'll give anything a shot, but I got to the point where I said, okay, you know what? It's time to go home now. I was wasting my time.
So
everyone's got their great tool.
You care about like the content. So everything else is extraneous details, you know, like artsy styles or different. You say they do one thing that's different from everything else, but the writing, the core of it, the actual storyline is what you value.
The writing is what I value. If I were to pick one thing that I value most, it's the writing.
Cool.
You know, there are other things that are aesthetic. There are other devices that I appreciate more than others. Personally, I'm not a fan of films that jump around with timelines a lot.
Oh, really?
Just because I a little bit. Again, it's a question of context, but if you can't figure out who's doing what and when, I'm there to hear a story.
Yeah,
right?
It can be a bit of a cheap shot to play around with the timeline. Like if you're lacking substance, moving the timeline around can really make you feel like you're being more interesting. Have you seen Umbrella Academy?
Well, yeah, it's hard to keep track of things. Again, there's exceptions to every rule that could be debated, but to me, it generally starts with a good script.
So as far as the timeline thing goes, Reservoir Dogs, that's out for you.
Well, again, that's an exception, not the rule, right? I mean, Tarantino, but I will say this about Tarantino. The first time I saw Reservoir Dogs, I had no clue what the hell was going on.
Yeah, I thought it was.
I said, I'm never going to watch another Tarantino movie again as so long as I live. I was in my early teens, and I said, what in God's name is this?
You were a rebel at that point.
Then, of course, Pulp Fiction came out, and I said, okay, now I get it. And then,
now I get Tarantino.
Go back and watch it. Do you appreciate it now?
Yeah, there's certain things too that you appreciate with
time.
The older that you get to some extent, and also the amount of movies that you consume too. To some extent, in a weird way, I also appreciate the bad ones as much as I appreciate the good ones, because at least on some level they've elicited a reaction out of me. I mean, I've gone to movies where I've actually sat through the things, but I thought that they were terrible, but giving me something to talk about because they elicited that kind of response is not necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. So, make me love it or hate it, but just get some kind of reaction out of it.
Yeah, I mean, apathy is going to be the death of any product that you put out there. If that product that you put out there makes people more apathetic and they're just like, I don't care to even talk about this or discuss this, that's when you've truly done something that isn't going to be successful.
That to me is a misfire.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the other thing that kind of gets on my nerves is the whole notion of reboots or prequels. Tell me the stories or don't tell me the stories. But there's been so many of them out there now in terms of going back and telling origin stories, and some of them are interesting, some of them are really well done, but there's just so many of them out there that you show me something new, show me something I haven't seen before.
So my dad has
blatant. Go ahead, Chief.
my dad has a general rule of movies and sequels and prequels. He says 99% of the time, the sequel will never be as good as the original. Would you accept that statement, or do you disagree with that?
I would accept that as a general statement, but every once in a while you do get a gem. Like, for instance, some of the Mission Impossible films, those have consistently delivered on the goods, and I can honestly say, that franchise is 8 or 9 films into it, and I haven't seen a bad one.
Yeah, those are fun.
First movie I ever saw
I
as
think
a kid.
I think the second movie in that series was handily the worst in my opinion, but the third I think blew me out of the water with Philip Seymour Hoffman's character, and I think the second one was it was pretty bad for me, but the third really, in my opinion, is far and beyond the best of that series.
Well, even the one that one of the most recent ones with Henry Cavill, that was a fun watch.
Oh, I haven't seen that one all the way through yet. I've been trying to watch it. What do you think about the John Wick movies? I mean, that's a favorite over
John
here in
Wick people.
Studio Denver.
Big.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, I know I watched them, but I wouldn't be able to have an articulate discussion with them. But I mean, I enjoyed them.
So
from what I remember.
I won't come on the podcast until you watch John Wick 3 at least 4 times.
We have a rule.
Well, I mean, there's certainly movies that I've seen over and over and over.
Yeah, I love that movie. I love that movie. Eli and I have seen that movie over 50 times.
By now, and it's come out in the past year.
We're obsessive about movies that aren't necessarily great. Like Troy, for example, like you said, Sean, I watched last night. I had someone who hadn't seen it before, so I basically scrolled through and gave him like the highlight reel of it. We'd go through one, and then I'd give my commentary, pause it, tell him what happens next, go to the next one, give my commentary, comment how sexy Brad Pitt is, go to the next one, say, oh, Eric Bana is also a very sexy gentleman, and then move to the next one.
Just these dudes that are sexy.
Jay, it sounds...
and you know what? That's one of the great joys in life is finding a film like that never gets old.
Yep,
and
it really is.
That you can watch over and over and over again, and you know all of the lines, you know all of the bases it's going to cover, but you still enjoy them. I mean, I've got a handful of them that I watch probably at least 2 or 3 times a year.
You are preaching to the choir right now. We run films into the ground. We watch them so much.
I drive my friends crazy. I've I mean, with me, the Rocky films are, I mean, even the bad ones I'll watch over and over.
I want to hear all of them. What are your
I'm a
films
sucker
that
for a
you...
boxing
Wait, hold on. On the Rocky topic, how did you appreciate the Creed spinoff of the Rocky movies?
That was as good as anybody could have done it.
The Creed spinoff
I think
is
those were
so
incredible.
good.
Yeah,
especially the first one, because I thought the first one had a lot more to say. And actually, that was really kind of enjoyable for me, because I actually got to, long before the guy was ever cast in that film, but one of the boxers in that film was actually on my show.
Really?
So when I got a chance to see that, the first guy that Creed fights there, the son of the guy that's running the gym.
Yeah, I'm struggling for his name. I've seen that movie
on my show a couple of years earlier, so that was really kind of cool. But they were about as good, and especially the second one. I said, "Oh God, they're bringing Drago back. How good is this going to be?" But
they did it okay.
You know what? They did a good job of it. And Stallone decided that he wasn't going to direct it. He said, "Look, these aren't my characters anymore. We got a good young filmmaker that's going to do this." He was, very mature and healthy about it, and it worked.
Stallone is a gem. Stallone is a gem.
I think that they chose a really good timing to bring back an old theme of kind of the U.S. versus Russia, obviously with all that's going on in the current climate here in the U.S. Obviously, that dynamic of U.S. versus Russia plays in perfectly with what's happening now in, the current political climate here in the U.S. And obviously that was an easy ploy back when the movies were originally made. It was a bit of an easy ploy now to use as well, but it worked perfectly. And
well, I mean, even if you look at the way that they use that device, though, the fourth film was just, an ostensible piece of propaganda, right? That was very clearly one country versus the other. This one, you got a guy who's down on his luck, who's living basically in poverty in Ukraine. Yep. Right. After having been disgraced, and the whole feel of it is a lot grimier and grittier, and one guy is not really any better off than the other.
It's less clear cut. Right. You would be forgiven for your understanding of where he's coming from and why there is this tension and hatred for each other. In that sense.
It's so emotional too. Like I think the thing that has over the first Russia versus US Rocky film is that it's emotional. You get the context of why, like this kid has so much pressure from Ivan and his crew, and then you have Michael B. Jordan who feels this pressure from his history, and there's more context to it. And to me, that really adds to it in a big way because Creed 1 is got to be one of my favorite movies of all time. That movie's so sick, and I rewatch that who's the guy he fights, the big guy at the end. He's about to go to jail afterwards, so it's like he doesn't care, so it makes sense that he's fighting this nobody kind of but with a big name. Who's that? Do you remember?
Not off the top.
I remember the character's name. I don't remember the name of the fighter.
Whoever he was, he walks out and he has that sick walkout theme. I don't know if you saw that, but he has a sick walkout theme where it's like dark and then like fire breathers like blow it in the air, and he has this sick walkout song. It rocks my world, and that movie gets me going easily. But Rocky, on the topic of Rocky and Sylvester Stallone, he has a cool story of how he came into being famous and being who he is. And I just wonder if you've ever talked to someone like that who's had a big story. I mean, some people make it the way you'd expect, and they put in their time, they get there. It's awesome. Obviously, they're talented, that kind of thing. But then there's a Rocky who spent his as far as I know, spent his last $200 to go to California. Gets there, pitches this movie. They say, okay, maybe we'll take it. We'll find a star, and he says, no, I'm going to be the star. And these movies become one of the biggest successes in all of that age. Big blockbuster boxing movies. What I guess first of all, what have you met people like that who just struggle? They just take a big old risk and they make it happen. And what do you think the formula for that is?
I think that I've spoken with a lot of people that are actually going through that now. That's a very salient question. Yeah. But I think that I speak with a lot of people that are going through it now that are looking for the way to break into things. And to me, that is part of what I love about doing the show is that you never know who is going to make it big. Right. Mm-hmm. I have had people that have actually gone on to huge things. I interviewed one guy whose name escapes me now, but who was the screenwriter for the second Die Hard film.
Oh shit!
And he was on talking about what it was like, and going out on some of these press junkets, and having to go landing on an aircraft carrier, and I mean the guy was a fountain of stories.
Yeah, that's so cool.
But there's other people that are students that are just trying to get their first few films off the ground. There's other people that have had a chance to work with some big names. I had somebody on who's a friend of mine recently who managed to secure Sean Young for his film, who was in the Blade Runner, of course.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the short answer is that I don't know that anybody's cracked the secret sauce on this. And that's part of what makes that business so hard, I think, too, is that a lot of these times, actors and filmmakers really don't know where the next paycheck is going to be coming from. To some extent, I think that explains why some of the salaries are so big when you get to the level where you can command that, because it could look perfectly good on paper, but if the thing goes over, like a turd, there's a chance that these people could never work again.
Yeah, they're just participating. They're not. They don't have the reins for it. So like it could flop and it could have nothing to do with them, and then all of a sudden they lose their income right there.
Well, I mean, Michael Caine said, he said, I haven't seen Jaws 4, but everybody tells me it's terrible, but I've seen the house that it built and I can show you that it's fabulous.
There's a Jaws 4? I didn't even know that.
Jaws 4.
Oh my gosh. How many of the Sharknadoes have you seen?
Well, I'm a big Michael Caine fan too. I mean, he's probably, if I had to pick one, he's way up there with my list of favorite actors. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Master Bruce Wayne.
Michael Caine. Yeah.
Michael. Yeah, can you give us an impression?
Michael Caine.
Can you say, I'm Casey Ryan, I'm on my favorite podcast right now?
No, I don't do the accent. So.
This podcast is
when you brought up the idea of the industry and having an actor that can demand so much money, but not really knowing if the final product is going to be what it's intended to be and as successful as you might expect it to be because of on paper. The first thing I immediately thought of was Entourage, the end of season 2 or 3, I want to say, the Medellin movie that they make, where they brought back in the original Billy Walsh director, who he did Queens Boulevard with, and Vinny Chase is the lead actor, and I think they had probably the same. I think E was one of the producers on it, and that movie flopped. And beginning of the next season, he's on a desolate island, run away, shamed, and that's a very real reality for a lot of actors out there right now.
You put yourself on a ledge.
I mean, one of the funniest things, I actually read this, and I also read a lot of biographies too. I mean, this is something else that I spend my time on. But in Bruce Campbell's book, I mean, somebody asked him at one point, and I'm going to mangle the story, but somebody asked him at one of these Comic-Con things that he was at, he said, how come you make so many bad films? And he says, okay, he said, let me put it to you this way.
What a question.
So I've got a script that's going to be directed by one of Steven Spielberg's top people. It's going to be based on a Michael Crichton book that was a bestseller internationally. And it's got an X, Y, and Z in terms of big, huge Hollywood stars. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Who wants to sign up for a film like that? And everybody in the room shot up their hand, right?
Right.
He said, congratulations, you've all signed on for Congo.
You've all signed on for what?
Congo.
What's that?
It's a shitty movie.
Exactly. Right? It was a big fat bomb the year that it came out.
Bruce Campbell was in that?
Bruce Campbell was in that. Yeah. And but it was based on a Michael Crichton book, and it was at the time when right around the time of Jurassic Park.
Right, on paper, it's just set up for success.
On paper, they look fantastic, and you'd be an idiot not to sign on for something.
Yeah, it's when 2 + 2 don't equal 4. You're like, yeah.
A lot of the times they don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, and it scares people away from making films like that too. So there was like after the whole Electra thing with Jennifer Garner, everybody thought that superhero movies that were led by women were a curse. You couldn't get one made, and they were. A lot of studios, balked at that, and then it took a long time before Wonder Woman came out, and then they, started to ramp up the engine again. But and I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm saying that people's memories are long, and the ability to really analyze what the root of the problem was, I think can be debated in a lot of cases. There's a lot of good ideas that don't get well executed.
Well, do you ever feel that, like, in Hollywood, there are sometime, I mean, this probably isn't a revolutionary idea, but there's often like people overthink things, and it's just like, this isn't what the art is supposed to be. The art is supposed to be emotion. You're supposed to fire it off the hip, and it's supposed to be like a love song, you know, like you're supposed to write the script on a whim, and yes, there's going to be misses, and yes, there's going to be hits. But then Hollywood takes that, and then they like market research it, and then they make sure that everyone wants to see that at this time, and like, oh, Wonder Woman's not working, you know. I mean, obviously it worked, but like as an example, like, oh, Wonder Woman's not working. Women aren't big in the superhero industry, you know, and like they statitize this, and I just made up that word, and then they were looking around.
Good use though.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's going to be fads, and I mean, if I won't be upset if I never see another zombie movie for the next little while.
Right, because it becomes big all of a sudden. Yeah.
You know, okay, well, what happens if we make a zombie movie where they all run really fast?
Yeah.
That's the big sell.
Okay.
The zombies have a new
what
ability.
happens if the zombies are kind of like aliens or something?
Yeah.
And yeah, you know, but let's figure out a way to get zombie in there, you know, so yeah, I think that to a certain extent that there is a lot of playing it safe, and you know, that's what makes the stuff that's outside of the major studios so compelling, because every once in a while you sink your teeth into something that's really enjoyable, that, you know, would otherwise, I hate to say it, wind up on the cutting room floor, that wouldn't get the audience that it normally does. That's why streaming services are so great.
Yeah.
You know, that's why, you know, Netflix built a model around it, being able to get art house films out there that people wouldn't necessarily see, and they don't have to be arty to be art house films. I mean,
right.
These are smaller budget films with really good stories to tell that otherwise wouldn't see the light of day.
The new Hollywood, and everyone benefits from it. You know, everybody
benefits. People crave good stories. Period. End of sentence. And you know, there was a now disgraced actor that gave a very compelling speech about that to one of the Glasgow television festivals, and that certain labels don't necessarily matter anymore. What difference is it whether it's a 2-hour movie or you know, a limited run series, which is the fancy way of saying, you know, I grew up watching miniseries.
Yeah.
You know, that would be broken up over 4 episodes.
Yeah.
What's the difference, really?
Yeah.
And what's the difference whether somebody watches 1 episode of something or whether they binge it in a weekend? You know?
I've got a follow-up question to what you said earlier. Do you have any number of films that you would like to recommend to anyone listening that you don't think have gotten the credit they deserve?
That's an interesting question.
Underdog films.
Yeah, underdog films, and where to watch them.
Underdog films?
In the recent years.
That's a hard one.
I'll tell you one that just came out on a streaming service that, I mean, I don't know if it's created a lot of noise or not, but that I just saw that I, you know, had heard nothing about, and I was on Prime Video, and I watched Arkansas, which is a movie with Liam Hemsworth, Chris Hemsworth's younger brother. John Malkovich is one of the main characters in it.
Oh, I love John Malkovich.
There was no advertising about it. I heard, and it just popped up on my TV one day, and I watched it, and it's a great film about, you know, big time drug dealers in
That's an underdog.
these nobody states called, you know, Arkansas. And if anyone who hasn't watched it, as soon as I was 10 minutes into that film, I knew I was in for, you know, however long it was playing. I highly recommend anyone to watch that. It's a
You weren't yelling at your screen at a Disney movie at that point?
No, the movie Arkansas, for me, I think if y'all haven't checked it out, definitely give it a watch.
Well, I can tell you one of the films that I haven't shut up about recently that I saw that I was really impressed with was actually a documentary called Class Action Park, and I don't know if you guys have seen that, but that was a riot.
Yeah,
it was a riot.
Class Action Park.
Yeah.
And it was about an amusement park in New Jersey.
Oh, it was on HBO. Yeah.
In the 80s.
I've seen the
where
trailers
they
for that.
basically the owner of the park gave the finger to every safety regulation that there was.
No.
And
It was supposed to be like an
was
extreme theme park or an extreme amusement park, right? Anything goes.
It wasn't necessarily. It wasn't an extreme park. It was just that they just sort of said, okay, you know what? Those are the rules. You know, but there was story after story after story of the ridiculous nonsense that they got away with. To test whether something was safe, they would pay kids $100 to go down the thing, and if they didn't get hurt, then you knew it was okay.
That is crazy.
You don't throw human
And
people.
they had one water slide that was a loop to loop. Okay.
No.
That they had to put a trap door in case somebody that was overweight went through and got stuck in there, that they could go and take the guy out from the top of the loop. Okay. And
oh my goodness.
And those weren't even some of the most ridiculous stories. I mean,
I'm watching this tonight.
That is
Johnny Knoxville actually wound up making a parody film about it.
No, it came on his radar. Oh shit!
And the guy was hooked in with the mob. He got in trouble with the state and local officials. If somebody sued him, he just dragged it out into court until they gave up. Like he would routinely bankrupt people that were trying to sue him.
Who knew?
There was, some of the other things that were so asinine. I mean, they had these go-karts that could go really fast for a go-kart, and they decided that they were going to put these things next to the beer tin. So you had all these people that were going and getting loaded and then going in and driving in these go-karts that would go way too fast for safety regulations. It was just...
Who proves this shit? Who proves this shit?
It was so... and again, I sat there laughing my ass off at this thing, and but this really happened.
Yeah.
You know? and it was told by people that had actually been to this park.
Right.
And this came up as something that was a suggested viewing when up here we have a service called Crave that I really enjoy. And I've got some of the premium movie channels too, but this was one of the ones that came up as suggested viewing in my queue, and it was a riot.
Worth a watch. Yeah, it sounds literally like a roller coaster ride of a viewing.
Somebody said it was like an 80s action comedy farce come true, and that's exactly what it sounded like.
That stressed.
So
honestly, I'm stressed out.
Class Action Park.
Class Action Park.
So we gotta be sure we gotta Class Action Park. We gotta add to the list. We also have to make sure that when you make a PodcastBozo themed theme park, that we abide by the rules. We don't
yes, because that's our natural progression. Become a successful podcast and then open a theme park.
No trap doors for
fatties. Is the next step.
Well, it's kind of a rough year because there's not as much content, right? Like I'm still sore that the James Bond got pushed out until April. I've been looking forward to that for God knows how long.
Daniel Craig's final film.
There's a lot of films coming out that I really want to see that they're going to be released kind of eventually, but James Bond is another one that I want to see what they do, knowing that this is going to be Daniel Craig's last film. So,
How did you think of the last James Bond?
Was that Skyfall the last one?
Skyfall was the best one. The next one was Spectre.
Spectre. Okay. The thing about that is that they started to bring back in some of the old elements. And personally, I don't think that you could have found another actor, if you tried, that would have provided a better voice for Blofeld than Christoph Waltz. You had to have somebody. You had to have somebody who was ambiguously European, that was multilingual and very cultured, and that really knew how to play bad guys well. personally speaking, I find, you know, the nods to some of the older films a little bit, there's maybe a little bit too much of them. I like a little bit of them, but when you do a little bit too much of them, I find it takes away to some extent from the originality of it. But you know, Christoph Waltz was as good a villain as you could have gotten. I mean, he was tailor made to play a part.
Inglourious Bastards, he is so evil.
He's a creepy man. I can't imagine that being your dad. Like, look at that guy. That's my dad on the screen.
The old "I wish this guy was my dad" episode.
Yeah. Look at this guy.
Well, I mean, you know, the best Daniel Craig film, as far as I was concerned, he got it right the first time. You know, when they did Casino Royale, you know, that blew me out of the water. That probably is one of my all-time favorite Bond films. Period. Let alone his.
Yeah.
So.
Let alone what?
Let alone Daniel Craig's. I mean, that would be, you know, one of my favorite films in the entire Bond franchise.
He's good. He's really good, man. My mom has the hots for him too. All right,
TMI, Jay. TMI. You don't gotta be spilling the tea about Emily's recent crushes. Jeez.
You have to spill the tea about my mom's name either, but
quick poll in the Twitter. Who wants to hear about JJ's mom's favorite Hollywood heroes?
Oh,
so,
man.
Casey, drawing back to your to the platform by which you built you know, the podcast a little bit, is there a specific memory that you have of seeing a movie you talk about, you know, discussing the movie afterwards is just as fun as seeing the movie? Do you have a specific memory of a discussion of a movie that certainly sticks out in your brain as why you started to do what you do with the podcast?
There's been a couple of them that it kind of stuck out in my mind. Some of the older ones, and there were certain benchmarks that I remember hitting where I said, you know what, I'm really on to something. And I remember when I first started, I had no clue how social media worked, and I started by leveraging existing context. Excuse me, I gotta sneeze.
Gesundheit.
Where I was working with kind of extensions of existing contacts that I had. So I interviewed a couple of filmmakers that way. Then somebody said, okay, you know, the well ran dry and I needed more people to talk to. So somebody said, get on Twitter. And I went on there and I had no clue how it worked. I had no clue how to engage with people. Mm-hmm. And I kind of screwed up when I was first getting started. And Rob's going to blush when I tell the story, but I bumped into a guy by the name of Rob Goki, who's become a good friend of mine. And he'd written a book about his first year on Twitter, and he saw what I was doing. He saw my heart was in the right place. And he says, look, he said, let me show you a few things. And he kind of taught me the ropes, and it wasn't so much of a push mechanism. It was, you have to want to make people gravitate towards you to some extent. So let them know who you are and show a human face, and
if you
let things happen kind of organically. Don't make it a hard sell. And he gave me a shot. He sent me a copy of his book, and I had him on to discuss it. He's been back multiple times. He and his wife are both friends of mine at this point. She actually just picked up a couple of different Emmys for some of the series that she's been working on.
Wow.
And so that was clearly one. There was another friend of mine who I met by the name of Lynette Carrington, who's actually going to be on the show next week. She's based in Arizona. And Lynette was one of the first people that was a publicist that actually approached me and said that she had clients or people that she was working with that she was looking to get additional visibility for. So knowing that I was getting on that kind of radar, and I've had that, I've been fortunate enough to have that happen to me a few times where people's booking agents come to me and that are responsible for drumming up publicity and seeing me as a value-added resource to the point where they want to get people on my show. I thought that was a high compliment as well.
Yeah.
Another one that there's a woman by the name of Rachel Thompson who gave me the courage to do a little bit more writing. That was something that I held back on a little bit initially, and she convinced me to write my first 2 blog pieces. And I still stand by that decision because writing is something that I view as a very personal expression. And if that hadn't gone very well, I probably would have given up fairly early, to be honest with you. but Rachel convinced me to get out there and do some guest posts for other people, and I took the jump, and I did a little bit of that. I haven't done that in a long time, but I don't know if that answers your question at all. But those would be three that I would view as really solid. And with Lynette, I mean, I've had a lot of different people on that some of whom you recognize. Lee Ahrenburg was another name that you wouldn't necessarily know his name, but if you Googled him, I mean, the guy's been in every sitcom and Pirates of the Caribbean, and
he has been
Californication and Seinfeld and all over the place.
You got my attention on that one.
Pirates.
Yeah.
Lee Ahrenberg, Renberg. If you Google him there, he's a riot, and I mean. He was probably one of the most recognizable names that I've had on so far. I've had Sean Astin on. I've had a few that were up there.
Lee Ahrenberg has one of my favorite moments in Pirates of the Caribbean when they're telling. I forget who they're telling the story of Bootstrap Bill to, though. Him and his co-character. Bootstraps. If you guys weren't familiar, that's who Lee Ahrenberg
That's who does that?
The bald one, yeah.
Oh, we like that guy, Cannonball Head.
I'm telling the story now.
Trevor Waltz.
Yeah, he was grumpy in Once Upon a Time.
Once Upon a Time, yeah.
But with a guy like that, there's a guy that's been in loads of different things, but that guy honestly has a real appreciation for his fans, and I really respected that. I mean, he said that Johnny Depp once referred to his fans as the boss, because they really are the people that go out and see these things. They're the ones that are driving.
I'm a fan of his. So, I love that.
But I mean, he had stories about going to high school with people like Charlie Sheen and Robert Downey Jr. and I mean, story after story after story, and I could have talked to him forever.
Whoa!
High school.
He was an extension of knowing people that know people.
You exploit those extensions.
There was another guy that who's since become a good friend of mine too. That I don't mind telling the story, but Charlie Allen, who is somebody based out of Scotland, and I met him through a mutual friend by the name of Paul Reeves, who I've been working with on a couple of other projects. But Charlie he said that every time the studio needs a big mean hairy guy for something, then they call Charlie. I mean, he's been in everything from Thor to Gladiator, and he hit it off with Russell Crowe, and to the point where when the BBC decided that they were going to do a documentary on Charlie, Russell Crowe actually narrated this thing. So, I mean, he was talking about that. He told me that he was in a hotel room on the set of Gladiator when he taught himself how to play the bagpipes. And I joked with him. I said, "You taught yourself how to play the bagpipes for the first time while you were in a hotel room."
Yeah.
And he goes, "Yeah." I said, "You must have been really popular with the people on that floor." But he's been on a few times, and again, he's a lot of fun to talk to as well. And he developed this great big, massive Duncarron fort out in the hills of Scotland, and it's a tourist attraction that allows kids to come in and see what it was like to live in medieval times, and all kinds of fun stuff like that. I mean, there's lots of really good stories out there.
That sounds badass. Oh man, I could imagine my parents manufacturing a way to make me see what it was like to live in medieval times. Like, this is how good you have it, type of thing. Like, look at this shit on the ground in the back.
And I asked him. I said, "What's the hardest part about doing one of these combat scenes?" He goes, "Honestly, I think," he said something to the effect of, "Every once in a while you get somebody who gets to be a little bit overzealous, and they don't realize that this is all still for make believe, and to some extent, yeah, it is fake, but there is the possibility to get hurt.
Someone commits too much, yeah." Oh yeah. What do you? So I guess. What do you think about method actors? What's your take on that? Because there are some method actors who obviously produce great films. Heath Ledger is one that comes to my mind right now, and he's obviously a sad example. But method actors,
anyone who played Joker.
Anyone who played Joker, but like they commit to their craft to the point that it's perfect. To some extent, like
perfect is a strong word.
I don't want to overuse perfect, but it's just great.
They really go off the deep end,
but right? At the cost of their own life.
I mean, there's a fine line between delving deep into a character and broaching, to a certain extent, a bit of borderline mental illness.
Yeah. Well, sometimes you drive yourself that way.
I mean, you hear about people and comedians suffer from this occasionally, where they really go off the deep end. I mean, somebody like Robin Williams, for instance, that was classically trained at Juilliard, but would go really deep into things. And some of these guys have nervous breakdowns because they lose track of who they are.
Yeah.
Right.
Jim Carrey, Man on the Moon.
Jim Carrey, Man on the Moon, right?
Oh man, that's crazy.
That was a hard thing. But again, he was playing somebody who, I mean, Andy Kaufman wasn't all right upstairs either by any stretch of the imagination. There was a lot of comedy gold that was farmed out of that, but he needed help too.
Yeah.
Right.
At what cost?
I think that there's a fine line between being true to the part and turning in a good performance and doing what's healthy for a person.
Yeah,
I guess. And the best actors are the ones that really know how to walk that line, right? That are able to commit to things, but not necessarily go too far.
But can still have a normal life outside of that and not live in jail. Like, isn't that what Heath Ledger did? Didn't he live in jail for like a month or something like that? Do you guys know about that?
Well, I mean, you hear stories about people that occasionally. To cite another example of a boxing movie where Robert De Niro packed on all kinds of extra weight to play Jake LaMotta later in life, right? Or where you see a film like.
American
I forget
Psycho?
which Christian Bale film it was where he basically emaciated himself down to next to nothing.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
Christian Bale's crazy.
I mean, he looked gaunt and sick, and even Matthew McConaughey in Dallas Buyers Club,
Dallas Buyers,
right?
Yeah, got tiny.
Where he really looked. I hate to say it, but he looked terminal, right?
Yeah.
That's the goal.
He wanted that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's a fine line, I guess, to everything. Yes, on the one hand, you want to commit, but personally speaking, I mean, it's great to devote that kind of attention to your art. I don't necessarily think that I'd be the kind of person that could do it. I mean, I assume if somebody's willing to offer me a $10 million paycheck, I'd be willing to whip myself into pretty much whatever shape that they wanted me to get into. But people think of it as a glamorous lifestyle. In a lot of cases, it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
Well, because you're sacrificing your emotions, I've come to realize, like, more and more, is one of the most, like, personal things you can do. Like, to be able to just lend your emotions to any scene, go into a movie and manipulate yourself to the point, like, people who can cry on command, like, we all love that as a viewer, but people who can cry on command are rendering these thoughts of the saddest moments of their lives, the things that have happened, the saddest things they think that could happen. A lot of those actors are bringing themselves there frequently for takes on takes, movies on movies. That's a big ask. That's a big ask just for us to believe that they're in that movie, you know? Like, I think that's a hard thing to say.
Absolutely.
I don't know. That makes me a little uneasy. I've watched Zac Efron's what do you call it, Netflix documentary of him, like, exploring the world, eating all the food and stuff like that. And in one of the scenes, he talks about how he like is kind of fed up. He's tried to quit acting a couple times, but he he's fed up with acting sad and being sad and putting himself there. And in that scene, ironically enough, he makes himself cry on command. But he's just like, it takes a toll because like the thing that makes me cry on command is like thinking about my parents dying or thinking about like if I had kids, if they died, that kind of thing. That can't be healthy for you, right? Like
Emotionally, yeah, that's gotta be
forcing yourself to feel bad.
That can't be healthy.
Well,
for you.
I mean, there are, you know, it's draining for audience members to walk out of certain things, and you walk out and you go, especially for the stuff that typically gets nominated for Academy Awards, right?
Yeah.
You know, these are really heavy emotional pieces, and I can tell you this much. I mean, I'm a devotee to the Oscars. At least I was up until they decided to change the rules and open it up to between 8 and 10 films being nominated every year. But I can tell you that after seeing stuff that's really heavily on you know, Oscar fodder, that I'm going to want to go out and have some brain candy and you know, see films like The Fast and the Furious and see films that are, you know, just for the, you know, pure escapism.
What's interesting is how it's well known that comedians suffer the worst from depression.
It's like a compensation method almost, right? Like
they don't get any crying and it's all laughs. So when they're back home, that's when they start thinking about this sad shit.
Starts. Yeah, like
it's exactly
because the pressure is always on them to be on, right? I mean, there's, you know, lots of examples of comedians that ultimately have nervous breakdowns. You know, Jonathan Winters was another example. But I mean, the guys were hilarious, right?
Yeah.
It leads to some phenomenal comedy. But even Jim Carrey, right, would go away for a while, and there's a lot of pressure on these guys to be consistently funny. Mike Myers is another example, where they generally tend to be withdrawn personalities because they need downtime. You know?
Do you ever have a guilt? All right, so this isn't directed at anyone, I guess, but sometimes I feel like you laugh at these people and they are making jokes as a living and they're doing it because they know it can make them more money the funny they are, like a Robin Williams. He's like, my job is to be funny. All of a sudden he gets associated as the funny guy and then he has this pressure to be the funny guy. And at some point I kind of feel like a guilt for watching these guys and laughing at them and perpetuating that desire for them to be even funnier, because some girls and guys are just when your career becomes you're the funny person.
It's hard to get out of that.
It's hard to get out of that.
Like
You're pigeonholed.
Ben Stiller was one of those guys. He always wanted to be a serious actor, but he was in like Meet the Parents and stuff, and and Zoolander, and he just perpetuated.
Kid. Have you ever seen Heartbreak Kid?
Yeah, and you know, Night at the Museum, but I think what happens is that and you could, you know, debate, you know, the fact that there generally is a lot of you know, substance abuse that goes along with some of these guys, but they're I think that they get to the point where even you can see that they're kind of spiraling out of control. So, you know, somebody like Sam Kinison or Chris Farley or John Belushi or even to some extent Robin Williams,
John Candy.
John Candy was different though. Like John Candy, ultimately, I'm convinced that what killed John Candy was his weight problem, right? I mean, you know, that was a guy that he wasn't. I mean, he dabbled a little bit in it, but I mean, he went to bed one night and had a heart attack, and that was the end of it, right?
Yeah.
But people that are high octane people that are living life at 100 miles an hour, like Chris Farley, that you know, you never saw him and he wasn't sweating. Right?
Yeah,
that's true.
People like that, you kind of see after a while that, you know what, maybe this isn't all that much fun anymore. And even with Jim Carrey to some extent, you watch a couple of his films where maybe there's a little something there, maybe it's not, but you know, maybe this guy needs a timeout for a little while.
Yeah, and he did. He really did. I mean, fame is deceiving. It's like, oh, look at this guy. He's the funny guy. Like, wouldn't it be cool to be the funny guy for your whole entire life? Everyone laughs at everything you say. But these people are making these decisions at a cost to their own livelihood and mental health and things like that. And it's honestly sad. It's really sad. I think it's really hard to watch.
I mean, one of the other discoveries that I made recently that unfortunately was only on for 2 seasons, but on the subject of Jim Carrey, I don't know if you saw that show Kidding that he did.
What was it?
That was really well written.
Kidding? Have you seen that?
No.
Not a funny show, but that was very, very well written. And I was kind of disappointed that it only lasted 2 seasons.
Well, I find
where he's the host of kind of like a Mr. Rogers kind of thing, but he's also dealing with a divorce, and the whole idea is whether you take a guy off the air because he needs the help, or whether you keep him on the air because he's a cash cow, and gets into a lot of different characters. His father is his manager, and there's a lot of really good actors in it too. That was another really compelling piece of storytelling that I enjoyed recently.
I like the idea that there's also the issue of, or not an issue, but like the whole idea of someone getting into being a comedian or an actor or something at a young age, and they feel like they're on that track where they have to keep performing, keep selling things out, and then they start learning about the world and dealing with different dilemmas and things that change their perspective on life, but they still feel like they have to go back to the same mindset where everything's okay and they're just performing.
They're like tethered, and they're being forced to bounce around.
And you see people that like have to break away from it. Like Dave Chappelle disappeared for a while. Like Jim Carrey dropped off the map for a while. People take these breaks, and then the whole audience is like, what happened to this person? Like rumors come out and all that. They expect people to be...
A few of them do that. Kirk Russell was another example. Christopher Walken was an example. He was a child actor whose parents had pressured him to be a song and dance man. And he was on a lot of some of the earlier sitcoms and things, or variety hours, what they used to call them. And he just decided that for a while he didn't want to do that. And then ultimately he said that, college wasn't necessarily for him, and he got back into acting. And then, luckily for the rest of us, because there was a lot of really good films that came after that. But
well, I think I've got one more question for Casey here.
Just one more?
One that I have prepared, I think, that I wanted to touch on a little bit.
You can't think of anything else? Were you kicking Casey out the podcast?
No, I'm just...
and I'm serious. I want to have you guys on.
There,
so come to a consensus as to when you want to do it. But any Sunday in November, and we'll make it happen. All right?
Yeah, sounds good.
Absolutely.
November's my least busy month, so that works out well.
So, I mean, I think this question obviously is more relevant now than ever with the current pandemic that's going on. How do you see that over a great length of time, streaming services will affect the movie theater viewing industry? As far as, do you project, 10, 15, 20 years down the line? Do you think that people won't be viewing movies anymore in movie theaters? Will movie theaters ever not be around, do you think, because of streaming services? Or do you think that there's a certain value in going to the movies as an experience that will never truly die out?
Projector sales are going to go up.
Okay. I'm glad you asked this, because I have some fairly strong opinions on this. I really hope that what we're witnessing is not the slow death of a movie theater. I love those places. I think that there is a form of escapism that you can get by going to a movie and making a night of it and getting your snacks and
all of it.
Again, it's an outing, right? This is Sam Goldwyn, who, from Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, at one point, and I've quoted him a few times when people ask about this, and somebody said, this is Mr. Goldwyn, and they said, "You're worried about televisions coming into the house, are people still going to want to go to the movies?" And Golden looked at the report and said that people could cook a perfectly good meal at home, but they still go out to dine.
Go out to eat.
Oh,
yeah.
there you go.
Right?
Yeah.
So I would like to think
I like that.
I really hope that this isn't the end of it. I was to some extent sad when video stores closed up for good.
Oh,
Blockbuster.
I went to see
yeah.
Blockbuster, and that broke my heart. But the way I look at it is, I've now got a Blockbuster on my television set that I don't have to worry about late fines.
Yeah, you won't return it late at all.
but I mean, that being said, I really hope that this is not the end of it. I think that what streaming services are good for is that it gives smaller films that wouldn't necessarily find bigger audiences the opportunity to do that. I think that this is as a consumer, I think that streaming is a new golden age, because there's a lot more content out there for people to look for. Now, the flip side of that coin is that because there's a lot more content out there, there's a lot more bad content out there too.
How do you seed through? Yeah.
Weed through it.
It's a question of wading through the good stuff and being able to get access to the good stuff, right?
Yeah.
But I think that movie theaters, pandemic aside, that will always be a place for big budget action extravaganzas, and the Marvels and the DCs of the world, and certainly the Disneys and the Pixars of the world. There's always going to be a home for those, because kids are going to want to go with their families, and but I think that it presents a good opportunity, but I really hope this isn't the end of it.
And there's so much increased value, certainly, by viewing some of those big blockbuster movies, or certain styles of movies in big movie theater type experiences. Like, the 3D thing never really caught. Like, I've been to plenty of 3D movies, and obviously that was something that you couldn't do. Now you can do it at home, but like going to see an IMAX, for example, going to see some movie about nature, and with that almost 180 degrees, the massive Dolby sound system, you're never going to be able to perfectly recreate that in the house, or the average, person will never be able to recreate that viewing experience in their own home.
Well, Gravity was another example of that. I don't know if you guys remember that film from a couple of years ago.
Sandra
Bullock.
Bullock, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That had to be experienced on the big screen, right? I came home, and I was telling people after I saw this, that if you want to see that, if you're telling me that you're watching that on a screen this big, you're not watching it.
Yeah, that's not the same movie that I saw. Yeah, if it's on a little Dolby Digital DVD player in the back of your car, it's not the same thing as when I saw it in IMAX.
Or you're watching it on your bloody phone.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're not watching Mission Impossible on a screen like that.
No, doesn't do it justice.
That's not what it's made for. If I made my movie for a 60-inch screen, a 90-inch screen, if I made it for that, and then you're watching it on your laptop or something, you might enjoy it still, but I literally filmed it with this screen size in mind.
Yeah.
You're supposed
I went to the drive-ins a few weeks ago. I mean, that's something. It was a blast. Brought back a lot of childhood nostalgia.
What'd you see?
There was some technical error, and our movies didn't start for an hour late, which was kind of annoying, just sitting in the back of the car.
Were you yelling at it like the Disney movies?
I was yelling at the screen, yes, absolutely. We saw E.T. followed by the first Jurassic Park movie. It was a lot of fun.
Ooh.
Some oldies.
I watched that the other day
classics.
too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Casey, give me your favorite movie snack.
I'm a nacho guy.
Oh, the nachos.
Yeah, I'm a nacho guy, and I'll go regional. And you're being from Burlington. I'm also I'm a big poutine eater.
Absolutely, the cheese curds. We love that.
I wish you knew that you shouldn't be tooting Sean's horn in this podcast. The one horn you should not toot is Sean's. But
no, but I mean, if I top it all off with pulled pork or whatever, I go straight to the arteries, and I don't tell my doctor that I do that.
Absolutely.
We already did.
Definitely nachos or poutine when I go to the movies.
How about you boys? What do you guys like?
I like to sneak in a bag of spaghetti, get a plastic fork,
That's
put
a
it
psycho move.
put it in my drinking cup, and just fork it out of the cup.
Just kind of
Do you
monkey it
actually
out
do
with his
that?
paws.
Yeah,
every
pour
movie
some
he
milk
goes to.
duds in there too. You get that little cream with the pasta.
You'd think he'd be a marinara guy, but he's all vodka sauce. He loves vodka sauce, scooping out with his hands.
The key is a little touch of pesto.
Yeah, pesto with a silent P. Casey, when you watch a movie, like what's your guilty pleasure? Like, what is the one thing you watch
besides the nachos and poutine?
You said you liked. Wait, are we talking about food still?
No, movie.
You said you like to see the dumb movies every once in a while, like the bad movies.
Yeah, but yeah.
Okay.
Your
Guilty
repeatable
pleasures and
guilty
entertainment.
pleasures.
I actually did a show on this with Ian and Kevin, my two closest friends. Every once in a while, I do an Ian and Kevin show, and like you guys, where we just hop on and just talk about random shit.
Yeah.
Professional wrestling is a guilty vice of mine.
Yeah. Who's your
Did you
favorite
see that
wrestler?
movie with The Rock that was just family fighting? My family
Fighting with my family.
Fighting with my family.
Yeah.
All right, chic.
That was based on a true story.
That was a fun one. I loved that.
WWE is a fun one. Something that I really enjoy. Anything with Will Ferrell in it, I view as brain candy. And I can tell you one of my guilty vices that I watch over and over and over again is I don't know if you guys have seen Walk Hard.
The Dewey Cox story.
Dewey Cox story.
Yes.
That hit
we all
every
know
music
that.
biopic that I ever saw with the ugly stick, and it makes me laugh my ass off every time I see it. And every once in a while, when I'm having a bad day, I just think to myself, the wrong kid died.
Oh, that's great.
The wrong kid died.
The imitations that they had where they get in with the Beatles and Elvis Presley and like I said, it hit every music biopic that I ever watched with the ugly stick, and that is definitely a guilty pleasure of mine for sure.
That's fun. I like the Dewey Cox story.
How about strangest movie theater experience? Have you ever gone to a movie
that's a
theater,
good
sat
one. I've had
down,
some
and
one
had
of
just
those.
like an out of the ordinary, bizarre experience at the movie theater?
Like some guy heckling you while you're drinking wine at the lighthouse, that kind
Some
of thing.
dude sitting in front of you with a feathered hat, talking about how he's an alcoholic.
Okay, you're talking about strange, actually seeing something strange or something strange happening to me in the
Something
movies?
strange happened. Well,
Not the movie. It's not about the movie itself. It's about your
The crowd.
experience there at
'Cause
the movie.
normally
Okay,
it's-
I went once with my two best friends, and we've chuckled about the story, but at the time it was actually kind of scary. The three of us went, and I don't know why I did this, but I looked over and there was an older lady, visibly older, like elderly, who was slumped over in a chair, and it looked like she was going to fall right down to the ground. I hate to say it, but she looked dead.
Yeah.
And I kind of nudged my friend, and
What's going on?
he just went, holy shit, and he got up and he ran out of the place.
He
and
left?
No, he went to get the manager.
Oh, I thought
he got one look and he saw what I saw, and he went and he got the manager, and he came back, and the manager called the three of us aside and said, look, boys, we're really happy that you did this. We're going to nudge her, but the woman was narcoleptic, and
I saw that going.
She's taking a snooze.
She has a tendency to scare people, and every once in a while there's a good Samaritan like we were evidently that was concerned about the situation, but she was we're gonna give her a nudge and just let her know that
she just went to sleep.
She was just sleeping, but it was a strange thing to see.
Yeah.
It's an odd activity for a narcoleptic to go to the movie
Don't
theater.
go to the movies. All right, the moral of this whole interview is don't go to the movies if you're narcoleptic. Oh my!
Do you have one of those experiences going to the movies and witnessing something out of the ordinary?
I mean, for the most part, there is such a known behavior, or how would you say it? It's like everyone conforms to the behavior at movie theaters. Like, don't really talk too loud, don't laugh out loud. I mean, you always get people who are like chuckling too much or whatever. But JJ and I went to see The Lighthouse, the movie with Willem Dafoe and.
Robert
Pattinson. Yeah.
And we had some fella. It was a great movie theater. It's like a local. It's called the Mayan Theater.
It's like a historic theater where they showed new movies, but they kept all the old seats and shit like that.
Definitely an indie theater.
Yep.
But we had some dude come up, sit right in front of us. He had like a big. It was just like a fedora meets like a feathered hat type thing.
Yeah, like a swashbuckler, but less cool.
He was a character, I'll tell you that. Like, he stood out of the ordinary, sits down in front of us, leans back. He's like, "Yeah, you guys seem like a couple of chill fellas. Like, I'm an alcoholic. Let's have one or something."
These are
Talking
words
to you guys?
These are words he said to us. He's like, "I'm an alcoholic. Let's drink." And we're like, this is a movie. Like, I don't know if we should just be talking.
I went to another fun. Now that you mentioned it, I went to one film where it was an action comedy that was set in Montreal. It was a popular film up here called Bon Cop, Bad Cop. It was half in English and half in French. Mm-hmm. And I went to some tiny little theater up north. I'm talking about up in the Laurentian Mountains.
Yeah.
With my family, and there was all of maybe 30 people in the place. I mean, it felt like you were sitting in somebody's basement watching this thing. That's how small the theater was. And I walked out of there laughing my ass off at this thing. And somebody came up and asked me what I thought, and and I went all fanboy. And this is great, and I was all hyped up and everything. And I found out the next week that the guy that had asked me this stuff was actually the director of the film.
No way.
And he was there, and I didn't know. I mean, he wasn't somebody that I would have recognized. And that's something he's somebody you see in the papers every day. But I mean, he was happy to hear from me.
What an unreal story.
That is awesome.
You know?
Wow. Imagine if you're just like, it was nah.
It could have gone that way, but I mean, I was there with my wife and my in-laws, and we all walked out of there laughing ourselves silly. And the guy goes, "Hey, you really enjoyed it?" And yeah, man, it was a riot. I hope you make a sequel. And
wow, what a good time.
He was all smiles, right? So
love that.
And then I found out later in the day, this Bon Cop, Bad Cop has a premiere at this tiny little film. I go, and I kind of look at. Shit.
Do your in-laws listen to your podcast?
Sometimes, yeah. My parents do too. Sometimes it was like I said, this is something that I do more for my own enjoyment.
It's for you, yeah. I'm just curious.
I know that my friends listen to it. I have a buddy of mine who's a teacher in a high school who I've been best friends with since I was about 14 years old, and he listens to me in the car on his way to work. And every once in a while, though, like it's only happened to me maybe 2 or 3 times, but I remember I forget, I was at some kind of social gathering, I forget where, and there was a group of people that I didn't really know very well, and somebody came up and said, "I recognize your voice from the radio someplace," and I just about blew my lid. You know who I am?
So
no, I don't know who you are, but tell me a little bit about what you do. And it turns out that he had a friend of a friend who'd been on my show, and he'd listened to me about, several months earlier. And you never know how far your voice is going to carry. And that's one of the fun things about social media is that you're going to have some really interesting conversations, and you never know who's going to say yes or no to you. I mean, and it really is kind of cool when somebody comes back and says, "Hey, yeah, by the way, I really like what you did," and the best kind of feedback is the kind that's unsolicited. That to me is the most honest.
It sucks to me that we can't get you to say something about us like that.
You guys are exactly the kind of, you know what, you got going what I wanted to get going when I first started. And I listened to you guys. You treat your guests really well. This is a really amicable environment. I felt completely at ease here. You guys were well researched. And it's clear that all three of you are friends and that you know what you're doing, and more power to you.
Casey, you're gonna make me tear up.
I know, Casey.
Thank you
got
so
me all
much, Casey.
I just want to put a disclaimer out there that this is misinformation. This is not what we are like at all.
You're a very authoritative podcast.
yeah.
We're
You cut-
ignorant idiots.
Cut the live feed and I'll tell you what I really think.
Casey,
No, honestly, this was a lot of fun. I felt completely at ease here. Normally I don't do a lot of the video stuff. I got a face made for radio, so
I disagree.
I was happy to do it, and we're definitely going to get you guys on my show.
Absolutely.
Bring us on.
Can't wait.
Bring us on.
Casey.
And I think it is a good time to break, and we need to pee because we drink during this, and our bladders aren't
Very small.
superhuman. But if you want to stay on, Casey, you're welcome to stay on.
Actually, I've got an early start tomorrow, so I'm going to say goodnight.
You got a job.
I got a 9 to 5. Yeah.
All right, Casey. Do you have a catchphrase? Do you have a catchphrase?
When I sign off, I go cut, print, wrap, and I am done.
Ooh, I like
you
that.
All right, let's do one in unison.
All right, do you have yours?
What? I thought we were all doing Casey's. Are we all going to say our own
No, I
ones?
asked you to make your own catchphrase.
Oh,
Cheek, do you have one?
I don't have one.
Oh, this is embarrassing.
my name's Cheek and lights are out.
All right, my name's Theodore Roosevelt and I have found lightning. That's it.
Peace.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Just thank you very much for having me on. This was a lot of fun. And like I said, let me know and we'll make it happen. You'll be on my show.
We'll pick a November day. Casey, you're the man. We love you.
Thank you so much, Casey.
Sit tight.
Thanks a lot, guys. Nice meeting you.
Have a nice night. Nice
meeting
meeting you
you.
as well.
Peace.
Peace.
And that's how you write a movie.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
I gotta go pee so bad. That's the longest we've ever made it without a pee. So see you guys after the pee break. All right. Well, wow.
Whoa.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
That is a delayed response right there. But yeah, welcome back. That was a good interview with Casey Ryan. We like him a lot.
Yeah, another big thanks to Casey. He was great. We love having him on.
He's honestly more incredible than I thought he was because he I thought his full-time job was doing that interview, the indie thing, because the indie interviews that he does in sources and the website that he hosts on, that's a full-time job right there. Yet he does it
Just for
alongside his job, and honestly, I think what makes him good at it is that he does it for fun, like you said. We do this for fun. I like this because I like talking to you guys every Sunday night, getting a little drunk, and talking to random people who have experience with things we are not familiar with. That's what I like about this. But yeah, thanks to special thanks to Casey Ryan.
We love you, Casey.
Casey. We never did before the podcast I tasked you guys with giving me a catchphrase. And I don't think you guys did that, did you?
When you sent that to us, I honestly thought you just meant in general you wanted a tagline to think about for the future for each of our individual selves. I didn't know that was a specific homework assignment for this episode. Now I feel bad. I feel guilty.
It was for this episode because he's like a radio DJ. He's a radio DJ. I had special name. I wanted us to all have special names that we'd make up on the podcast and have catchphrases like Bobby Bones, like that kind of thing.
Is that the one you came up with?
Yeah, it was yours, Bobby's
No,
Bones.
Bobby Bones is a real country DJ. He's a real guy. But I was listening to him, and that's what made me think of it. I'd be Jones and Jay. Jones and Jay and 104.3 The Fan, that kind of thing.
Say that 5 times fast.
Jones and Jay on 104.3 The Fan. Thanks.
Last once. What was the one we came up with?
I feel like you guys never read all the texts I send before an episode. Like I send like 15 texts, and all of a sudden.
Well, I think you're sending anagrams, so I just read the first letter of every word, and it doesn't make sense. So I just close the text.
I get that. Yeah, no, that's totally reasonable to think that I'm doing.
The cryptic messages, Jay.
I'm about
agreed on that.
I'm about as cryptic as Benjamin Franklin in National Treasure. Yeah.
Yes, you are.
You keep dropping hints to us and secret messages and codes.
You guys gotta read my texts more. I put effort into this, all right? There's reason that I put this out there. But regardless, we're talking about success. You want to talk about success?
Yeah, I do really want to talk about success.
Success?
Success.
The key to success.
Harassment? What's the other way to say? Harassment.
Harassment?
Hurrah. Yeah, whatever that was, Cheek, when you beat up Alex Weiss.
That wasn't me.
Did he blame that one on you too?
Yeah, I bet he did.
Oh my God.
But success, I think the important part of success is, and to tie it into Casey Ryan, is that he has all these people from different walks of life who are really bound to what they want to do. By the time they get to Casey Ryan, they're committed. You know, this is their career, this is their path. The thing that makes them successful is that, in my opinion, they're doing what they want to. A lot of people are like, oh, success is how many people listen to you, how many people talk to you, how many people pay you, how much money you make, followers,
what's your ratio,
digital blah blahs. I don't know. I find success in this podcast every week because we just have fun doing it. Like, I just have fucking a blast doing this, and I think that's successful. Has nothing to do with how many people listen to us.
I just think success is getting a nice whiskey brand.
Oh, have we
like
thanked him yet?
Bruciladich to sponsor us.
I honestly am ashamed that we haven't thanked Austin B yet for this.
Let's take the time right now.
I should have done it the first thing we did, because this is honestly amazing that he did this.
Tell the story. Let the audience know.
Austin B is, in my opinion, our best fan, right?
Oh yeah, it's definitely competition.
Our most loyal
you can be a
listener.
bad fan, you can be a good fan, you can be an exceptional fan like Austin B.
Yeah, and we have family who listen, that kind of thing. Like, they listen, but they're obligated because of family. Austin B is just the boy. That's it. That's all. Boom,
Clear cut.
bomb, bar none. That's it. And we love him because he listens every week. And
We love him because he listens.
Gives us feedback. He interacts.
And he's a good guy. He after every episode, he messages back. He weighs in. We like that he's okay with me not answering right away because he knows I'm busy, and like sometimes I don't answer right away. And then, just to top it off, as if it was some kind of competition of who's the best fan we got, Austin B rolls in, swagging P, winging his dinger around, and he just sends us a nice bottle of whiskey. It's Scotch whiskey, and it is nice. It's smoky, it's full of tannins, and it has one of those... It has a whirling dervish that most connoisseurs can appreciate. So...
this is all true.
Yeah.
So cheers to you, Austin B, and your Scotch whiskey.
I sincerely apologize for not saying this first thing in the podcast. We had a guest, and I kind of got distracted. You should be notarized for doing such a deed.
Phenomenal job.
To Austin's deeds.
To Austin's deeds. And we wish you well. We wish you and your child and your wife well.
Also, we know way too much about you, which is awesome. We know you have a child, and we know you have a wife, and we know that, yeah,
And in the
Appreciate
future season 3, when you're battling Cheek for his spot, we wish you all the
vote for
best
you.
luck. We'll vote for you
Whoa,
to take
whoa.
his spot.
You'll easily replace him.
makes-
so-
But we're getting
What
ahead
makes
of
you-
ourselves. Let's
What
cut
makes you
back.
think you're not the one who's on the chopping block here, E?
Because who's got Austin's whiskey in their hand?
That's all due to location, I think. The fans,
There's a reason why
let
he
the
didn't send
fans
2
speak for
bottles.
themselves. Who's going? Put a poll up on Twitter right now. If we're chopping someone off the block, is it E? Is it Cheek? Or is it J?
Well, we know it's not me. So.
Cheek, I don't think you want to see the result of those polls.
All right, Cheek. We'll
I'm
say there
putting
were
a
no
poll up.
results.
What is
I'm putting a poll up right now.
What's your definition of success, Cheek?
Yeah, Cheek. Is it losing out on your own podcast?
I'm out.
All right, and now we can put Austin in. Let's go.
Yeah, so he's been waiting in the sidelines.
He's been sitting on the sidelines for this.
I mean, success, Cheek. What's success to you? What is it?
Success is, being the best at what you do.
Really?
Being the
best.
best version of yourself that you can be in life.
That's the kind of controversial
So-
opinion that I wanted to see here.
So you would argue that Johnny Depp impersonators are not successful.
Well, I would like to view the scope of Johnny Depp impersonators, and one of them will probably be successful, and a lot of other ones will probably be pretty unsuccessful.
That came out of nowhere for me. I didn't expect that at all.
And what do you think about Bill Gates impersonators?
Thirsty.
Being the best you can be at the one thing. All right.
Cheek, do you consider yourself successful?
No,
Or-
not yet.
What is your definition of success within your life?
If I felt that I had reached the goals that I have set for myself and was content with where I am, I would be successful. But I'm not.
So do you think that your goals of success apply to other people?
No, I think that each individual for themselves needs to define what they want to view as their own success. But I think that there are general guidelines and general templates that you can follow that can help you define your own version of success.
Do you really think success is as rigid as applying to a template?
No, that's what I'm saying is it's not a rigid thing, but I think that there are certain things that we can all agree on would help you define success. Whether or not we can, for example, I think that we can all agree finding personal happiness is something that helps them define success, but it's not the only thing that helps them define success. I think a lot of people would view having a certain financial stability would be a form of success, or, having a happy family would be a certain form of success, and within each individual equation. So there are parts of a template that you can pick and choose to define your own version, but success is different for every person.
Do you think, how closely do you guys think that success relates to happiness? To me, they're very closely related.
I think they go hand in hand. Yeah.
Hand in hand.
Yeah, I think.
I don't think that everybody thinks that, though. I think there are people who define success through power and money, and maybe they don't realize that it doesn't give them happiness as much as they thought it would, but they would consider themselves a successful person.
That's a big reason why I bring this topic up, is because I think today a lot of people who are on the economical side of policy say oh, we shouldn't get taxed because we work so hard, And I get that hurts because you feel like you're being deducted for your hard work. But if you're doing your hard work for money, is that really the success you were seeking? If you were seeking the success of money, if the whole reason you wanted to do what you do is to make more money, and you get mad because it's being taken away. If you're a doctor and you're like, oh, I'm pissed because I work so hard and my money just gets taken away from taxes. Isn't that fucked up? Isn't that a little fucked up? Are you really being a doctor for money? Are you saving people's lives for money? Are you cutting people open, replacing their kidneys, juxtaposing their livers, slurping on their hearts? Is that all just for money?
It's because you're a vampire.
It's because you're a vampire. It's because you have dark magic cast upon you. But
For being real.
But it's like, I don't know. I think you could be successful no matter how much money you make, no matter how many friends you have, no matter how many.
Absolutely. Like you said, success is close to following what makes you happy. And
Yeah.
I would say that success is not an achievement or a milestone, but it's a path.
Yeah.
And on that path, you have varying degrees of and heights of successes and milestones. Like, I would consider myself successful because I'm doing what makes me happy. Like, I'm learning how to draw. And even if I just learned how to, draw something in perspective, that's a very small success, but still like something that makes me feel happy, makes me feel like I'm progressing. And then, down the road, it could be something like making a whole cartoon for myself.
Yeah.
And then maybe someone who doesn't really know what success is be like, oh, he made it. He made a cartoon. But little do they know that it's like a path that brings you there. It's not just...
It's
boom,
understanding
done.
the journey of it.
Yeah, the journey of it.
Well, that's, I think, one thing that really pisses me off about art paths is that, like, I think there's a lot of, like, all right, this is a weird scenario that I'm forming in my head, but imagine Mr. Finance guy who went through the Wall Street way, went to business school, did it all the way his parents did. They expected it to be the guaranteed money, that guy looks at art major and says, oh, how's your art going? That's one of the most frustrating sentences that I can imagine. How's your art going? Because it's general. It's like, it's purposefully unspecific because they don't care about it,
Mm-hmm.
How's the art going?
It's like the implication that they don't do any work. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, well, because I don't know. It's because I think what it comes down to is that finance guy doesn't realize that art guy put the same amount, if not more, effort into
Time and commitment.
Being an expert in that field. Like, you guys can be the same level of it.
Yeah.
And finance guy writes it off because it's art. Because it's like, because art guy thinks it, or finance guy thinks it's like sissy work type of thing.
Yeah.
It's not numbers and finance and dad did it, it's not. Yeah. But it's bullshit because to be good at anything that you do takes time, effort, thought, practice, ritual. It takes all that stuff.
Yeah.
And finance...
It's easy to discredit things that seem different from yours. Like, easy to see things as, is science and logos and reason and logic versus art and dilly-dallying and all that. And that's
dilly-dallying is a good term that people just discount things with. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like, oh, you're not taking your time. You're doing our girlfriend today was like, oh, I hate how people associate psychology as a soft science. Like, a lot of people call psychology a soft science because it's a lot of girls do end up doing.
It doesn't deal with numbers.
Psychology. Yeah, because it's not like combining chemicals. They call it a soft science. Like, it's basically lack of a better term and lack of appreciation of the work that goes into it, and lack of the appreciation of the importance of that study.
That'd be a good subject in the future, like the different varying opinions of importance on fields of science and everything.
Yeah, what makes honestly, in general, what makes your career more important than someone else's? And I think there's a dissonance in that category because, like, you look at Joe Finance and he's like, oh, my job's important. I pay taxes. I deal with taxes. I take people's taxes or whatever.
He's
IRS.
doing these hand movements too.
He's in the karate. He's in karate mode, and
he's a finance guy for a karate studio.
Yeah, he's a black belt in finance, and he's just
Hoocha deduction. Hoocha deduction. I'm Joe Finance Karate Guy. Call this number now, and I'm gonna karate chop your taxes away.
It's like the cheapo lawyer. But if you're Joe Karate or Joe Finance in this case, like, don't get offended. Like, come on. Acknowledge your role in society. Look at what you're doing. It's fine. You're a smart person. Don't worry about it. Like, we're not attacking you. Stop taking it personally. If you're Joe Finance in this case, acknowledge the fact that you worked hard to be where you are. And you are not the only person that worked hard to be where you are. Like, there are other people who worked hard to be where they are, and just because you aren't there and you look at it and you say, oh, I think that could be easy, that does not mean it's easy, and that does not mean it's easy for anybody.
There's definitely a group of people, because in high school it was very popular, where people try and look for the easiest route to success. And you get like those kids in high school who will skim the homework or ask for someone else's homework, and you know, it's always about what's easiest, and their focus is on how can I succeed with the least amount of work? How can I get it easiest and all that? I think that's a lot of the same type of people. The people who do discredit, oh, you're doing this. That's easy work. That's hard work.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's a misunderstanding of what goes into it. I don't
You
really...
can get lucky, though. I mean, that's definitely a part of it. There are people who hit breaks, and...
Yeah, you catch a good break. You make a good connection if you're Joey Finance, you make a good connection, all of a sudden you get that golden elevator, as your dad said to me one time, where you just like where you ride at the top, you make the good connections. Same thing with art, like you make one. We got ambulances outside.
You can make one piece that gets a ton of followers or something like that. You
create one piece that attracts a lot of people. It could be your least favorite piece. There's a lot of like musical artists who are like, this wasn't my favorite song by any means, and people loved it more than anything I've ever made. So, I don't know.
That must be so frustrating for a musical artist.
That would make me want to
when they go on tour for that album or whatever, and the song that they wanted to be the hit song is not the hit song. And then every tour after, like what you hoped would be the song that people are shouting for, play this, it's just not.
Wouldn't that be confusing? Like, you put your heart into whatever work is your favorite. You put your heart into it, and then song C, like the third back in your priority list, makes it big. And you're just like, what? Then you get that automatically confuses you. And you're automatically like, all right, so that's what made me popular, but this is what I like, and
it's confusing.
That's fucking confusing.
And then you'd be like, when you perform that song C, should you do it the same way you've always been doing it, or should you like put an extra oomph in that, or would it mess it up?
Yeah, do I want to add my taste to it, or... That's sketchy. That's sketchy stuff right there.
That's some sketchy stuff.
That's some sketchy stuff.
Sketchy shit right there.
Success.
We've been playing a lot of Pirates Die recently.
Yep, I sure have been. I've been on the open seas.
Scallywags.
What level are you?
Of Pirates Die?
Yeah.
13.
That's embarrassing.
Jay, how many candles do you have lit when you play Pirates Die?
Jay, I got a question for you.
Yeah?
Are you a successful pirate?
Ooh.
And I think that really boils down to the point that we want to make, is that success does not matter how you do comparatively to other people. So yes,
unless you're doing the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a game, you might lose to someone else. Yeah, but if you're just playing Pirates by yourself, you're just shaking, rattling, rolling those wood boys on a wood tin, and you just roll it, lay it out.
No one knows what you're talking about. Those wood boys and tin.
But if your idea of success is just being happy with what you do, like if this Eli and I were talking about this. If this podcast never reaches anyone more than Austin B,
we would still continue to do it.
I would do this for 10 years beyond, and I would keep doing it after that because this is just fun. Like there are some Sundays where I'm like, dragging my feet to get in here.
Yeah.
I'm not ready to do this podcast, but as soon as we start, it's just laughs, smiles the whole time.
It's definitely a responsibility, but once we get in the flow of it, it just becomes natural again.
Yeah,
and there's no matter how many times we've done it, there's always a little bit of nerves at the start too.
Yeah, which I like. It's like exciting, and I think that factors in. This is why anyone who's listening right now is entertained by us, because
we are the most creative guys in the world.
Because it brings in more creativity.
That episode.
All right. Do you guys
shout out to Hip? I want to do a quick shout out to Hip.
Why? Oh, you just want to drink and shout out?
I miss him.
Got to go fund for his knees right now.
I do miss Hip. To Caitlin, honestly, we never cheers to Caitlin. We always cheers to Hip. To Caitlin.
Do you think Caitlin listens?
No. But Hip listens, and then at some point he'll be like, Caitlin, the best podcast in the universe, just
tell
shouted you
Caitlin.
out. Starts with a K, ends with an Aitlin. Caitlin. Starts with a Hip, ends with a no knee.
No knee.
All right, I think we should wrap this bad boy up. We probably hit at a 150 mark on this with our gap. We're at 220 right now, but we had like a 20-minute gap, so. All right. We always end with something funny. We always end with something funny.
Jay, did you create a tagline to sign us off, Jay?
Oh boy, you visited DJ the Jet, and this is your airwave, so land it when you wanna.
There you have it.
Land it.
Panned it.
Petunia.
And now you got
toast
it.
to the. I think we should end with a toast to the airwaves.
A toast
we
to
wouldn't
the
be
airwaves.
here. We wouldn't be here without those waves.
Those sweet, sweet radio
those
waves.
Succulent, radiant, spectacular, scurvy ocean airwaves.
And a toast.
Here's to you.
And a toast to the radio waves. Thank you so much.
Those scurvy
Thanks for being
radio
there.
waves.
Hope to see you next week. Thank you, Casey Ryan. Thank you, Austin B.
Thank you, Caitlin.
You've titillated us. And Caitlin, thank you. You've also titillated us.
All righty. Love you guys.
Wow.
Mwah.